I'm doing okay, thank you. Good job on the intro there. And we thought we'd switch it up a little bit for these Tuesday Night Live extra podcasts, which, as you say, a very clever play on words, of course. And, basically it's just not on a Tuesday. So, I'm doing good. And, hopefully... this is quiet, apparently. Yeah, I think, Toby, I think you might have been muted. Just.
Cheeky kid.
Oh dear. Right. Well, we're gonna have to cut that out of the Spotify, aren't we? Well, good evening, everybody. I guess I'll do it now. Oh no, go on. You do your bit, Toby. Go on. You did it perfectly. Go on.
I haven't got my script anymore. What am I possibly gonna do? Yeah, all right. We'll put this out to Spotify, but for you YouTube guys, this is all behind the scenes. Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
I better be unmuted.
You are unmuted.
Jesus Christ, you are crap at this. Last week you didn't be live for 10 minutes. This week.
It's because I recorded the Snooker video, wasn't it? So I had to mute the desktop audio.
I definitely am unmuted now. You're not taking the mic.
I'm not.
Okay. Let's do this again, shall we? And let's pretend it's just come on and we're going.
Mm-hmm.
I can't compose myself now.
Good job we went off early, innit?
Right. Breathe. For Joe, in editing purposes, this is where you're going to cut out to, and then we are going to go live on Spotify. Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Tuesday Night Live Extra Podcast. It's just a simple code name for podcasts that aren't broadcast on a Tuesday evening. Very good code name by myself. I'll take all the credit for that. But tonight we're going to be discussing the Australian Grand Prix, the opener of the Formula One 2019 season. All the talking points, the big talking points that have happened. I wonder who won the race. But of course, I can't do this by myself. This is going to be broadcast on Spotify as well. Tomorrow, that'll be up tomorrow and on demand, of course, for you to listen into your ears. But if you want to listen to the video, then it is very well worthwhile following myself and Joe on Twitter and making sure that you know when we go live every single week. That was a bit of a risk to say every single week, but oh well. I'm sure we can stick to that at some point. But of course, I said I couldn't do this by myself, so I'm going to introduce my co-host. And for the first time, you didn't do this, folks, but this time, let's give a big hand to my co-host, the one and only Captain Goodspeed, aka Joe. There's your big hand.
Yeah, well, I mean, my streaming skills have gone out the window. We've had two podcasts and two technical hitches. For those of you on Spotify, the first minute or so of this podcast, Toby was muted, which, considering he was doing the intro this week, was a little bit of a problem. So, very professional there from Toby. Doing it a second time just for you people on Spotify. But, good evening, everyone. I'm doing all right. And, obviously, It was a crazy weekend, actually, over in Australia. And, first of all, rest in peace to Charlie White. And obviously we got that awful news on Thursday. I think it was Thursday morning, that he'd sadly passed away. And I don't actually know who took over his job for the weekend. But, certainly massive shoes to fill. And he will be missed in F1. I remember him coming over the radios quite frequently and, putting people in their place. And obviously he was the go-to man for the teams, which, but yeah, it's sort of the last one of the old era of the F1 bosses gone now, isn't it? Because obviously Bernie went and Bernie's still alive, of course, but he went on to pastures new. But yeah, so the Australian Grand Prix weekend. I actually had to watch the highlights this weekend. Crazy. I didn't watch the race till about 1 o'clock last night, but I have watched it, and we're ready to talk about all the big talking points of the weekend. So obviously Friday practice. It was we started the season as we basically finished the last one with Mercedes just dominating free practice, and people were saying, Ferrari are sandbagging and all of that sort of stuff. But yeah, it turned out Mercedes were actually quick in the end. Or do you think it's just a one-hit wonder, or do you think they're the real deal?
I don't know. I think Hamilton likes this track, which definitely helps. Obviously, he had a full string of the practices, topped all the practices, and then obviously topped qualifying and topped the Grand Prix for about 50 yards. That he didn't.
I think that's being kind to him.
all these naysayers that say, well, the season's really rubbish, are just talking out the backside, to be quite frank, because if you watch that qualifying session, which I thought was the best qualifying we've had for 4 or 5 years. I can't remember a qualifying session where it wasn't affected by rain, but it was so close, and I think that's a real treasure, and hopefully something we can have in all the races this year. But to address your question in a concise way, I think Mercedes still are the top dog. I think we did expect it, didn't we? In the preview we did last week, by the way. That's a bit of a Spotify plug. If you haven't watched that, make sure you go and listen to that on Spotify, or of course on the YouTube channel. But I think that Mercedes have still got the pace. Whether they're as far forward as maybe some people thought they'd be, I don't think they are. But if you look at all the practice results, all the times, even though we looked at those in testing today, proved to be rubbish. Apart from second practice, which to be fair, Ferrari focus more on their race time. You can see that by the fact that Leclerc was down in 9th. That doesn't tally up too well. But in general, they weren't too far off. It was Hamilton really who got the Supremo over Bottas and anybody in the field. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. In terms of qualifying, I think that honestly Bottas did a really good job. I think that Lewis is the top dog round here. Lewis beating Valtteri in all the qualifying sessions, but Bottas did a good job. I think that the Red Bulls and Ferraris were a little bit underperforming, especially Pierre Gasly down in 17th. I'm not sure what happened there, but we can talk about that a little bit later. But I think the time of Mercedes domination is gone, because they've really got to look over the shoulder. I just think this weekend, the Australian Grand Prix is usually a bit of a bland Grand Prix anyway, in terms of the front running battle. It's been proven over I can't think of a battle we've had around Australia in terms of the lead. So no, I wouldn't worry about it. I think Bahrain will deliver a lot more in terms of race pace for Ferrari and Red Bull. But I think in particular with Ferrari, it's got to be a bit of a disappointment, hasn't it?
Yeah, and considering they had such high expectations, going into this race, everybody was on the hype train of Ferrari are going to walk away with the championship. Mercedes are going to be lucky to be third best team at least. As you say, I think Ferrari will be very disappointed with the way the weekend's gone, because if Gasly was up there, and maybe if incidents didn't happen further down the field, then would Ferrari have even been 4th and 5th where they were? Do you know what I mean? They just looked a bit off colour this weekend, and I'm not entirely sure whether it's just the Albert Park track, but they won there last year, with Vettel. So it's not as if it's like a Singapore for Mercedes, do you know what I mean? So a very strange one, and obviously the team orders late in the race with Vettel and Leclerc's told to hold position or whatever in 4th and 5th, even though Leclerc was going pretty rapid at that point, but obviously they couldn't get any more than 4th and 5th anyway. So maybe shows a signal of intent of where they plan to go this season, certainly at the moment. But yeah, I think they'll be very, very disappointed with this weekend, and
definitely, yeah.
I think it'll be a big body blow for them as well. They've built themselves up to be this really positive atmosphere, and they've got this really quick car, and they've come to Australia and it's just not quite there. And that must be a massive sucker punch to be 0.7 off Hamilton in qualifying. Like, I know Hamilton is the qualifying god, but they needed to have closed the gap to him this year, and on the first race of the season they haven't done that, and that is going to be a huge blow, I think, to Ferrari.
I think it will, but I think we're only at the first race of the season. I think, of course, it will affect them, but I think unless it's a running frame throughout the first few races, I wouldn't get up in it. But...
I think they're lucky that they've got 2 weeks. I think if the next race was this weekend, I think they'd maybe have a bit of a hangover from it. But they've got a chance to reset over the next couple of weeks, and obviously come back a little bit stronger in Bahrain. But I mean, you alluded to it before, but. Pierre Gasly is obviously the other fella that will be really, really disappointed with his weekend. Sort of an unlucky victim of Q1, where there was a second covering the top 18 cars. Having flashbacks to 2012 and your series. And then you've got Robert Kubica 3 seconds behind Carlos Sainz in 18th. It's very sad to see Williams so far off the pace, but we kind of knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, we did, and we'd only be going back in circles if we talked about Williams again at the start of the season. 2 points from qualifying I want to talk about, really, and the one, well, 3, but the one relates to the other. Pierre Gasly, very unlucky, and I think he was really bad in the race not to capitalise, particularly not to get a point. I think it just highlights how much Daniel Ricciardo was a good overtake. If he was down there, it would have easily finished P6. Now, I'm not saying that it was all Gasly's fault, because Australia is known as a hard track to overtake, etc., but that's not really any excuse not to score a point. The other thing I want to briefly touch on, but not too much, is the driver of the day, and that's Lando Norris. What a brilliant qualifying that was. I really didn't expect that. But looking at his times, he beat those around him in the first 2 sessions. Hulkenberg, the only one to beat him in Q1, in and around the Raikkonen, Perez, Ricciardo, etc. group. So, fair play to Norris, and nice to see McLaren a little bit higher than they would be. And I think
Giovinazzi did as well, actually. Giovinazzi beat Norris in Q1.
It was a good lap, but then didn't capitalise later.
Yeah.
He didn't see any improvement from his Q1 time, whereas the other guys all seem to. So that's not great from Gio for consistency reasons, but I think Norris was just the driver of the day, hands down, to beat Kimi in that Alfa Romeo, to beat both Renaults, to beat the Racing Points, and to be fair, to be right on the verge of potentially even being up there with the Haas cars. It's got to be something that's got to be credited on.
No, definitely, and I think that's encouraging for McLaren, because I think Carlos Sainz was another unlucky victim of the Q1, bunch of cars that could have quite easily went out in Q1, but it was so close. I mean, actually, when you look at it, it's half a second between first and 15th, and then there's an extra half a second to the ones that I guess didn't go out again or failed to improve on their lap times, because there was something about track evolution or whatever. But I think McLaren looked a little bit promising this weekend. I'm not going to get too carried away, but they certainly looked ahead of where they were last season, which was second bottom. But I think Lando Norris did a terrific job and pulled out clutch laps right at the end of the sessions, really, to get himself into the respective next qualifying session. So good to see him do that. Nice to see a British talent doing well. You never seen Palmer doing that particularly, did you? Or Will Stevens or Max Chilton. So it's nice to have a new one in there. in Q3. But yeah, you talked about the Renaults as well. Obviously, they both went out in Q2. Do you think just a little bit unlucky, the wrong side of a 122.5, or do you think
I don't think so. I think Australia's been a real shock for Renault. I think that not as good as certainly I thought they'd be. I thought they'd be. You'd got the top. Well, I discussed this in the preview we did, but I felt that you'd have the top three, and then Renault. But it doesn't seem like it. Seems Haas are the best of the rest. I don't think it's the case that Renault were unlucky in Q2. I mean, okay, you can say that you can't prove the race pace because Ricciardo went out early, but Hulkenberg's just a standard in that position of 7th or 8th, whatever. So I think that not a lot can be proven and not a lot can disprove that theory on their race pace. So I think there's definitely time to find for Alpha, but I think at the moment you've got to put Haas 4th in that pecking order, just ahead of Renault.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think it's very much a case of a repeat of last year with Haas. You know, they've come flying out of the blocks, and once again with the tyres at the pit stops. Honestly, don't know what's going on there, but 2 years in a row, it's cost them big points, and they might come to regret that come the end of the season. You know, you would feel like Grosjean would have probably finished in the top 10 at least. So if it's going to be as close as it looks this weekend, they might come to regret that a little bit later in the season. But yeah, as you say, I think it's a little bit too early to say about Renault, isn't it? You know, if they found an extra 10th in Q2, they would have been in Q3. Who knows where they could have ended up in that Q3 session? But yeah, I think definitely a bit of reality striking for them, and showing how much work there still is to do. But I think they'll come strong in the European races. I think they'll have something up their sleeves for sort of Spain onwards. But obviously,
it's all about winning the battle over the season, isn't it? It's not going to be dictated by one race.
Oh yeah, 100%. So that's Renault. I don't know where you want to go to talk about now.
You know, obviously, one race we can talk about. The race.
Bottas.
You messaged me this morning, didn't you? Just Bottas, eh? Yeah. I mean, it was a surprise. And it's something that usually happens in the Formula One. Unfortunately, now it's something I don't like to say, but before the start, you think, right, it's all going to happen at the start. The start will dictate the result, and as it did here, Bottas got a better getaway than Lewis, and took him into turn one. And to be fair, he was out of sight. Set a lap that I know he was going for the fastest lap, but it was half a second clear of anybody else. And I think Valtteri was right. It was the best race of his career, and quite possibly the best way to strike back after a winless 2018. The way that the pundits and us, us included in that, and slagged him off, really, didn't we? In the preview, we went, he's not got a chance. He's going to be replaced by mid-season, but he certainly gave the finger to Ocon, didn't he? Yeah,
there was a good image of Ocon after the Grand Prix, and he was sort of smiling and laughing, sort of, and clapping as Bottas had just come across the line. You were thinking, well, you're definitely not getting a shot this season at the drive, unless Bottas completely falls off the face of the earth in the next 10 Grand Prix or so. But it certainly doesn't look that way. He looks focused and determined to prove himself this year, I think. And his lap in qualifying was astounding, and it took Lewis Hamilton's best to beat him. And pretty much any driver on their day would be beaten by Lewis Hamilton's best. So definitely no shame in that. And he put Lewis under a huge amount of pressure in qualifying, and we know that Lewis's starts are a bit questionable, to say the least, and took full advantage of that, and as you say, he drove off into the distance.
Correct. It was a brilliant weekend from Bottas, and his pace was good throughout, so it's not a fluke that he won. Just a question for you. Will this be the first and last time he leads the championship this season?
I don't think it'll be the last time he leads. I think he'll probably lead going into China. Because even if Hamilton wins next time out.
But once he loses the lead, do you think that Hamilton will just have him. What I'm trying to say here is that after that first race, has he got a potential title chance, or do you think it's just going to be just one or two good races, an early start, and it'll flatter off? I know it's tricky to sort of predict, but
I think unfortunately for Bottas, it's kind of out of his hands. I think, as we've seen, Lewis Hamilton has been getting off to notoriously bad starts to seasons in recent years. I don't think since 2015 has he won multiple races in the first couple, sort of the first 4 or 5. So, if Lewis continues to get off to a little bit of a mediocre start for his standards, certainly in the race, then, Bottas can build up that buffer, which Rosberg did in 2016, and Hamilton struggled to get it back, and, ultimately didn't get it back. But if Hamilton wins next time out in Bahrain, then wins in China, Hamilton is an amazing front runner, and he will be very difficult to stop. But I think he's proved himself capable of winning any Grand Prix on any given day. So why not?
Yeah. I think if you can really, as you say, if Hamilton doesn't perform, there's no reason why he can't win the first 4, because Ferrari's pace certainly isn't that threatening, and I don't think Red Bull's is either. So
no,
they are above the pack at the moment, and he can win. Just touching on the Red Bull and Ferrari before we continue. Not really so much to talk about for Red Bull. I think Verstappen took his chance while it was there. Fair play. A little bit of discussion there, just a few minutes. What do we feel about the team order situation at Ferrari?
I mean, it sort of sets a unhealthy precedent for the season, doesn't it? I think you've got to follow in Mercedes' footsteps of the last few years, and you give your drivers the first 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe even 12 races to go flat out with each other, and then you decide who you're going to back, if necessary. And I think for them to rob Charles of them 2 points, if he loses the championship by 2 points, they look like complete idiots. For doing that at the start of the season. I think it's sad to see, especially because Vettel didn't look especially brilliant this weekend. I mean, Leclerc made a mistake in qualifying and was still only a couple of tenths behind him. So
in the race, Leclerc went off and cost himself 5 or 6 seconds. I mean, they always use the excuse, well, there's a vulnerability with the car. I'm not really sure about that.
But they were in no man's land, exactly. They could have crashed into each other and still finished 4th and 5th. So,
in the end of the day, I feel with the team orders, they should have done one or two things. They should have either let Leclerc through, or they should have pitted Leclerc and gone for the fastest lap.
Yeah.
But the fact they didn't do either is disgusting, to be honest. I think that I can understand their logic, keeping Vettel ahead. He's got the better championship chance, etc., etc. But why didn't you bring Leclerc in that case? Because he just got told to back off. Bring him in, get the fastest lap. A, get a point off Mercedes, and B, get an extra point for Charles.
I think Ferrari's leadership is shocking, and it has been for a number of years. I think they're always second to the party, I think.
They're always too worried of doing anything that's too risky, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. Really,
I think that was a no-brainer. Bring him into the pits. If you didn't want him to get past Vettel, bring him into the pits. He got enough of a buffer to Vettel. Then he could have pushed, still come out over the line comfortably in 5th. And there was no pressure on them to make a quick pit stop. 40 seconds in front of Magnussen. There's no pressure for them to make a quick pit stop. So all this rubbish about, there's risks involved with a pit stop. There's risks involved every time you go onto a straight. It's irrelevant. But the fact that they did nothing is very poor, from my opinion, and not a good start to Ferrari's season. A, with their pace, and B, with the new leadership of Binotto. But just finally, we'll talk about a few of the run scorers, the point scorers, run scorers. What am I on about?
Bairstow and Root and
good race from Magnussen, qualifying well. Hulkenberg, good positions gained. Raikkonen, impressive. Kvyat, good return.
Kvyat had not Kvyat. Raikkonen, I feel, had a bit of a a bit of a nothing race, really. Like he was sort of the Raikkonen of last year. It was really weird. It was.
But in that Alpha, he's just got to pick up solid points.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he got past Lando Norris at the start,
Mm-hmm.
and was just consistent after that. Mm-hmm. And then just one more thing, Lance Stroll got some points. Well done, clap, clap, good for him. We all know my opinions on Lance Stroll, and to be honest, fair play to him, he got the points. But can we admit that the reason he got those points really is because Giovinazzi held up Norris, Perez, Albon? I was going to say the Williams. The Williams weren't that far back, weren't that far forward. Also holding up Gasly as well, I think. But I think we've got to attribute most of that anyway to the fact that the Norris, Perez, Albon group were held up by Gio and Stroll stayed out. I mean, it's a good strategy. I'm not saying anything against that, but I don't really think that. I don't think that flatters the race in points, and it flatters Stroll as well, in my opinion.
No, I agree. I think the racing point have very much been flattered this weekend by Perez getting into the top 10 and them scoring points. I don't think they're in a position where that's
a regular occurrence.
Yeah. Certainly not at the moment. They're pretty good at developing a car. So we'll see how they do over the season. But I think Norris was a little bit unlucky not to pick up a point, but yeah, good to see Kvyat back in the points as well.
Things didn't go his way, didn't it, with Norris? A few things didn't go his way.
Yeah.
At least he finished the race. As you say, with Kvyat, great performance.
Yeah.
Nice to see him back. And
smashed his team, mate.
And just shows that, he smashed the Red Bull as well, if you hadn't noticed.
It was a good overtake, to be honest.
Yeah, really, it shows that they shouldn't have dropped him.
Yeah.
Not Red Bull, but Toro Rosso, they should never have dropped him.
Do you think there's a possibility of if Gasly underperforms, Kvyat ending back up in that Red Bull?
I've seen it all with Kvyat.
Yeah. He ends up taking over Bottas and winning the championship.
I'd be less surprised at that than Williams scoring a point, put it that way.
Well, it's funny you should say that. I was just looking at the fastest lap times of the Grand Prix, and this is Andrew Benson, so it may well be wrong, but we've got George Russell on a 1:28.7. Now that compares to Lando Norris's fastest lap of a 1:28.5, and even Nico Hülkenberg a 1:28.4. So. Are Williams actually that far behind, or was it just everybody else was taking it easy and they were able to just go for qualifying laps every lap because they were so far out of it?
I think Russell might be car decently competitive, but
yeah,
out of his league.
Yeah, I certainly think it's going to take a long time for Kubica to get back to anywhere near where he was.
But at least Russell was Russell about, I know it was second. Was it a second off Sainz over a lap in qualifying? Yeah, 1.3 seconds off, which isn't great. But at the same token, to be only 2 seconds off Mercedes, there could have been a lot more. If you look at the people are comparing to the HRTs of 2012. They were certainly better than that.
Yeah. I think Kubica was a little bit hard done by in qualifying because the lap he was on before he touched the wall was fairly competitive with Russell. So I think again it's maybe a little bit too early to say, but Kubica had a shocker this weekend. But I think we'll see Bahrain and China. If he's still that far off the pace, then questions need to be asked. But who do they put in there? Ocon? It's tough, isn't it? Really.
It will be tough. Yeah, I couldn't answer that, honestly.
So who impressed you this weekend? A team and a driver that impressed you this weekend?
I think I was most impressed by Toro Rosso.
Okay.
A bit of a weird choice, but I think that their car looks solid midfield runners. And I think that, Kvyat did well, etc., their lap times are competitive. A driver I was impressed with, even though his race performance wasn't the best. In fact, no, Norris is probably second. I think Bottas was the most surprising.
Yeah. I was about to say the same. Yeah, I think Bottas impressed me the most this weekend. Hamilton up until the race. I thought Hamilton was imperious until the race, and then Bottas, was just in another league on Sunday. Team wise, I think it's difficult. It really is, but I think Haas again very impressive. To be the fourth best team at the moment. Obviously, we'll see more in the coming Grand Prix whether Renault will snatch that back from them or whether Haas are genuinely going to be fourth place at the end of the year. Another thing I was impressed by was Honda's reliability this weekend. I thought that was really good. And
yeah, I'm surprised. I mean, we've discussed it like before.
Yeah.
That Honda's not as bad as people think it is, and
Yeah.
funnily enough, in the speed trap, it's very quick. So
Nah. They were very rapid. I mean, Max was unlucky not to get past Hamilton, I think. Although I do think Hamilton had a little bit in the bag. A very good start for Red Bull Honda, and perhaps they will go on and do your double that you're predicting come the end of the season.
I don't think Ferrari will be as strong as I think they will. I think honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the top five look like they are in the race. Obviously, probably with Vettel and Hamilton and Bottas turn round. I don't think that's unrealistic, do you? I think Hamilton, Bottas, Max, Seb, and Charles in the championship.
Yeah.
Especially looking at how Gasly started the season. I know it sounds daft, but he's 10 points.
He's going to finish 11th in the championship.
Ninth would be the biggest surprise. Never mind Gasly 11th. And Robert Kubica finishing above Grosjean, Ricciardo and Sainz.
Oh dear! Imagine. Oh god!
I can't imagine it happening. I can envisage it a little bit, but no, it's not coming.
Unless Kubica gets called up to Mercedes or something, I don't see. Well, even then.
Well.
But no, a very entertaining Grand Prix. I thought there was a decent amount of action, or maybe that's just because I was watching the highlights.
There's a few boring parts of the race, but that's what you get.
Yeah. Front wings were a little bit weird. They seemed to be detaching quite easily and sort of in huge chunks as well. In past seasons you would have maybe lost an end plate, but they're losing the whole structure at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's just the fact Australia's a street circuit. I don't know why Ricciardo went that wide. The bumps didn't help, and I don't know what happened to Kubica. Actually, Kubica's front wing flew off, didn't it?
He made a bit of contact, I think, at the first turn, which again is probably a bit of rust, considering he's probably never. No, he will have ran on a car that heavy in 2010, but but overall a good weekend, and looking forward to the next one in Bahrain, which is in 2 weeks' time, and that's always a fun one under the lights, and there's usually some good racing around Bahrain. Certainly if it's as close as it was this weekend between the teams, I think we could see a lot of on-track action in Bahrain, which would be really, really good. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say about the Grand Prix. Do you have any final thoughts about it that you want to express?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just a good start to the season. It's pleasing to see that it was a good Grand Prix. Not the best, but not boring. And I think that Bottas winning has sent a few shockwaves through the system. So good for him. And if he can do something similar in Bahrain, again, it'd be great. But as long as he doesn't win every race, because that might get a bit boring. And Hamilton might spit his dummy out a bit. Yeah, I think it's got the potential to be a really good season. You could say that the Australian Grand Prix underwhelmed, but the Australian Grand Prix is never the most exciting. So if you're a new Formula One fan, don't worry about that. I think that the next few races, your China's, your Bahrain's, not as bad. Well, I think China's been exciting the last few years.
It's usually got the most overtakes because of the long straight and DRS.
It's a mega race, even though I don't like the circuit. But yeah, there's some good races coming up, and I think by sort of Catalonia, we'll have a good marker of who's where on the grid. But of course, we'll be bringing you all the previews, all the reviews, all our reactions to the Formula One season on Tuesday Night Live, or maybe even Tuesday Night Live Extra. that's when we can't do a Tuesday podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, that's basically what happens. We just decide to do a podcast on a Monday or something if Toby's got carton. But if you are listening on Spotify, obviously you can find us on YouTube at Captain Goodspeed, all one word, or TIJ Gaming, and I'm sure he's got a link to the podcast somewhere on his channel, or if he doesn't, he's going to soon. But no, it's been a nice little chat about the Australian Grand Prix, and as Toby said, we will be probably doing these for virtually every Grand Prix unless it's an absolute shocker and there's no talking points at all. But if there is a talking point, we will talk about it on the podcast, and we'll be doing season reviews, mid-season reviews, all of that as we go throughout, as well as other sports as well. I realise it has been pretty F1 heavy recently, but we will be talking about other things to do with the world of sport and gaming, because that's what we do. We talk about what we want. But thank you very much for coming along this week. We realise it's not on the usual day, but hopefully we'll get a few sort of post-stream views and things, and just remember to have a look on Twitter to know whenever we are going live. But the next one planned is in a couple of weeks' time. I think it'll probably be for Bahrain, the Grand Prix there, and then we'll maybe even do a World Snooker preview sometime after that as well, which is coming round sooner than you think. I think it's a month on Wednesday until the World Championships, which is brilliant. So thank you very much for watching. If you're on YouTube, make sure you leave a like and leave your comments down below as well to let us know your thoughts about the 2019 Australian Grand Prix. If you're on Spotify, obviously follow us on Twitter and on YouTube as well if you want to get involved in the live stream and tell us your thoughts. But for now, that is where we're going to leave it. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Goodbye.